you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. On page 39. Jean Louise Finch, otherwise known as Scout, serves as our narrator in To Kill a Mockingbird. The entire book is told from a perspective of an innocent young child. Being a Bill Dung's roman novel, Scout's maturity level changes a lot throughout the book. When the book begins, Scout is nearly 6 years old. Her long childish afternoons consisted of drinking lemonade with Calpurnia, talking with Miss Maudie, and most importantly, trying to get Boo Radley to come out. When Scout attends her first day of the first grade, she meets her teacher, Miss Caroline Fisher. Miss Caroline notices that Scout can read the alphabet as well as newspapers. Scout is an extremely smart young child and shows this to her teacher as well as her classmates. On page 22, I suppose she chose me because she knew my name. As I read the alphabet, a faint line appeared between her eyebrows, and after making me read most of My First Reader and the stock market quotations from the Mobile Register aloud, she discovered that I was literate and looked at me with more than faint distaste. Scout is also a keen observer to the racism and prejudice in the town of Macomb. Because of her naive persona, it makes her a shrewd observer of the injustice in the town. For example, throughout Tom Robinson's trial, she sees with her own eyes the hatred between blacks and the whites, between Mr. Gilmore and Tom Robinson. Scout also experiences the hypocrisy in the missionary circle. On page 312, Miss Maudie responds to Mrs. Merriweather. His food doesn't stick going down, does it? Referring to when Mrs. Merriweather talks slowly of Atticus and his misguided decision for defending Tom. Scout clearly picks up on the hypocrites in the missionary circle and makes a comment about realizing when I grow up, this is what I'm entering into. On page 313, Scout says, there is no doubt about it. I must soon enter this world where on its surface, fragrant ladies rock slowly, fan gently, and drink cool water. Scout is not the typical girl. In fact, she routinely defies the gender conventions of Macomb, much to the extent of bothering Aunt Alexandra. She would much rather horse around with Jem and Dill than pursue more ladylike activities. In the first line of chapter 3 on page 30, Scout says, catching Walter Cunningham in the schoolyard gave me some pleasure, but when I was rubbing his nose in the dirt, Jem came by and told me to stop. This is just one example of Scout showing her tomboy manner at school. My symbol that represents a trait that Scout possesses is a pair of overalls and 2 fists. In the book, Scout is described as being a tomboy and having a very rough personality. The overalls represent what Scout would much rather wear on a daily basis than a nice pair of shoes and a dress, which is also why Scout is frowning and wearing her dress at school. I put 2 fists to represent Scout in her rough manner. On page 112, Scout says, this time I split my knuckle to the bone on his front teeth. My left impaired, I sailed in with my right, but not for long. This is just one example of Scout being violent towards her classmates. After her cousin, Frances Hancock, called Atticus an N-word lover, Scout takes action by attempting to knock out her cousin's teeth. My theme that ties in with my character is white roses. White roses are the universal symbol of innocence and honesty of intention. Scout is still just an innocent young child. For example, when Scout sees Atticus outside of the jailhouse with the old serum game surrounding it, she walks up to Mr. Cunningham and ends up saving Tom Robinson unintentionally through her innocence. White roses are also a symbol of loss of passion, which I intentionally use for the fact that Scout's innocence and passion was lost and killed. Another addition I added was up in this window. I have layers of alternating black and white. I created the symbol to recognize the hypocrisy in the schoolhouse of Miss Gates. On page 329, Miss Gates says, over here we don't believe in persecuting anybody. Persecution comes from people who are prejudiced. There are no better people in the world than the Jews, and why Hitler doesn't think so is a mystery to me. At the end of chapter 26, Scout immediately recognizes how Miss Gates is a hypocrite and says to Jem, Jem, how can you hate Hitler so bad and then turn around and be ugly about folks right at home? The black and white flaps show that the teacher says one thing but also says another thing, which are complete opposites. Lastly, I put the mockingbird watching the schoolhouse in Scout to tie in the entire meaning of innocence displayed in our narrator and protagonist of the book. Overall, Scout is a perfect narrator for the audience to see the story through the eyes of a young girl.